Zimbabwe cash crisis worse. Talking about Venezuela once again. Systemic important banks. They removed the one factor you do this thing called monetary awareness.
Next recession.
Recession will be
a recession.
We're going to hit a recession.
The date of the next recession.
A U.S.-only recession typically lasts 8 to 10 months, but a lot of things about this particular one have not been typical. So
a crash is coming. Now, whether it's 6 months from now, 12 months, 36 months, no one knows.
I go to bed every night, I dream of another recession. If you know what to do, if you have the right plan to set up, you can make a lot of money from this.
Hey there, hope all is well. Back at you today with some more RT News updates. And as you can tell from today's title, how the baby boomers will lose their retirement nest egg, I want to share with you a couple thoughts as well as some articles on how the next market correction will be catastrophic for a lot of people who have saved up in hopes of retiring comfortably as they get older. But it may not necessarily be the market correction or housing price correction that might be the cause of it. It typically happens after a market downturn and the policies implemented by the government as well as central banks that lead to the major problems. And then based upon history from other governments and how they've dealt with their problems, you can kind of get an idea of what might be some scenarios that might happen down the line. But before I dive into that, I want to invite you to click the subscribe button for more RT News updates as well as interviews. And if you have not yet, please go over to steemit.com/RTD and subscribe there for more articles as well as video content. And if you're new to RTD altogether, I want to encourage you to visit the RTD University page where I put together all my prior interviews dealing with monetary matters as well as fiscal policy and the importance of having sound money in your possession today. So without further ado, let's get into today's articles and discussion. So as I mentioned, I have a couple articles dealing with the subject matter of nest egg and being able to save for retirement from our baby boomers. But more importantly, I want to take the angle of what if you have been responsible and you've done everything that you've been told to do, but yet you don't have enough. And more importantly, if you do have enough and you're very comfortable as of right now because everything appears to be good, what happens after the next market correction where the stock market does tank, housing prices drop, and everything else becomes very questionable? Then at that point, what usually happens is monetary policy kicks in, and that's the most dangerous part of your nest egg. And I will share with you today how I believe that based upon history, during the same time as the Great Recession, there were other people around the planet that had similar situations happen to them, and their entire nest egg was wiped away because of the policies implemented after the correction in those countries. But before I dive into that, as always, I want to encourage you to take the time to read some of these articles for yourself and get a better understanding of what exactly going on and how the policies implemented impacted those people. And also, I want to encourage you to watch some videos in regards to some gentlemen that I interviewed from areas near the Zimbabwe area and how they tell a different story because they were actually there and felt some of the pain. So let's dive into today's articles. So today I have a couple articles I want to share with you. As I mentioned, they're all a little bit older, but yet very relevant to understanding the importance of how a nest egg in and of itself during and after a correction is endangered. So here we have an article from CNBC. It says, even $1 million retirement nest egg isn't enough anymore. Next one here says, retirement savers lose $117,000 to unexpected events. Next one here from Los Angeles Times. It says, as baby boomers retire, the times will be changing. Next one here is from Equal Times. It says, will Zimbabwe's pensioners finally get what they are owed? So let's dive into the very first one. So this article here from CNBC kind of lays the foundation that if you have $1 million, if you've done everything that you were told to do, you're fiscally responsible, you save more than you spent, you live within your means, it's still saying here that with $1 million, it still may not do as much as you actually think it might. And so here I want to share with you some thoughts here. And then more importantly, as always, read more for yourself. It says, even with $1 million retirement nest egg isn't enough anymore. It says, with more retirees responsible for their own financial security, even $1 million nest egg isn't really enough. It says, considering the looming retirement savings shortfall, experts say there are only two ways out. Either earn more or you spend less. And so give you an idea what's going on here. For instance, a 67-year-old baby boomer retiring now with a $1 million in the bank will generate $40,000 a year to live on, adjusted for inflation and assuming a sustainable withdrawal rate of 4%. It says it's worse for a 42-year-old Gen Xer whose $1 million at retirement will only generate an inflation-adjusted $19,000 a year when all is said and done. And a 32-year-old millennial planning to retire at 67 with $1 million will live below the poverty line. It says for most Americans, there's been a serious lack of proper investment, income, and planning. It says Avalon, the person's quoted here, says that coupled with inflation, a looming pension crisis, and longer life expectancy is a toxic formula for successful retirement, he said, one that will result in a dramatic drop in lifestyle for retirees. So here we have the idea that, even $1 million now will not really be something that you can bank on to get through retirement. Factor in all the other issues that surrounding me right now. We have not enough savings for retirement. Then we have the pension crisis. Then we have the volatility in all the markets that people are keeping an eye on every day now because there's so much chit chatter in the markets. So you factor all that in, the idea that even if you were responsible and you saved $1 million, you still will be questioning whether or not you'll have enough money to live the rest of your life upon. And so that's, even during good times right now, supposedly. So what happens if there is a market correction and then there are some policies implemented after that that will really eat into you what you've saved? That's what I want you to keep in mind for today's discussion. Next article here from CNN Money says retirement savers lose $117,000 to unexpected events. It says unexpected setbacks ranging from stock market decline to suddenly supporting an adult child have taken a major hit to baby boomers' retirement savings, according to a recent survey. Such retirement derailers set savers back an average of $117,000, according to an Ameriprise financial survey of 50 to 70-year-olds with at least $100,000 in cash savings and investments. So now we're talking about $100,000 in cash savings and investments. So it's nearly all or 90% of those surveyed had experienced at least one economic or life event that hurt their retirement savings. It says that nearly 40% of respondents said they had been hit by 5 or more unanticipated events, causing their average loss to jump to $144,000. It says, quote, the lesson that we are taking away is expect the unexpected. And that's where we're getting at. It says the recession took a major toll on baby boomers' nest eggs. The top 3 derailers found in Ameriprise survey were low interest rates that hurt the growth of retirement assets with 63%. It says market declines 55% and lower than expected home equity, and almost 20% pointed to a job loss as a factor. So here we have, for those that have a little bit less savings, the quote here of you should expect the unexpected, it plays into what I'm getting at with this whole news update here, is the fact that those who have been responsible, they've had some type of unexpected event that ate into their savings. And one of the things mentioned here was the idea that after the market crash happened for this article here, there was a lack of interest available on the savings they had, which was not sustainable, or they lost a job, or they were not able to get the type of equity out of their homes that they anticipated. So those unexpected events in and of themselves play into more of the reason why after the market downturns, there's always some policy implemented which leads to unexpected plans, and the fact that those who saved up 100 or 100,000 or 200,000, how they were impacted based upon the results of the past recession where the Federal Reserve dropped interest rates to 0. That means that everyone who's saving lost or were not able to actually get true actual return on their investment, which led to a lot of the investment companies being forced to invest in junk type of assets to help people get returns. And that was all as a result of monetary policy. So imagine the next downturn when that happens, if the Federal Reserve decides to go below 0, which is more than possible since we have a lot of countries in the EU that are negative territory. Think about how that's going to eat into your savings as well. And then you factor in the excessive borrowing by our government, how we could probably somewhere approach higher inflation, borderline hyperinflation. So that is where this is all going. So the next article is from Los Angeles Times. It says, as baby boomers retire, the times will be changing. It gives a foundation as to how their last recession really impacted the baby boomer generation. Give you an idea what's going on. It says the country's financial crisis came at a particularly bad time. It says this year, the oldest of the 78 million people born from 1946 to 1964 are turning 65 and become senior citizens. Because of the immense size of this baby boom generation, the number of senior citizens will more than double between now and 2050, from 40 million to 89 million. And older folks will make up an even larger share of the population. increasing from 13% now to 20% in 2050. So here we have a major portion of our population that's entering to retirement phase, factoring in all the idea of whether they saved enough or not. Now we're going to come into the play that because of some market downturn that is inevitable to happen, because we've had such a long expansion of so-called growth and recovery, that we're due any time in the next month or months to have an official recession announced, and then the consequences of all that plays into the idea that there's going to be some policies implemented after all of that that will really alter the plans and expectations of all of these millions of retirees going into retirement. And so that plays into the very next subject matter of what happened at the same time in Zimbabwe as we were dealing with issues here in the United States of America with the stock market dropping, housing crisis, unemployment. And in Zimbabwe, they also were dealing with their own crisis. And because it's such a small country, it really wasn't covered much on the mainstream media. But I believe that a lot of the things that happened there are similar and what could happen on a global scale this next go round when things really hit the fan, because it won't be an isolated event by starting here in the United States of America. This will be more of a global contagion, which will really impact all markets. And as a result, the policies implemented and the government's response of borrowing massively to help slow down the recession that will probably end up turning into a depression will lead to the massive amount of currency creation, which will probably put us on the fence of exceeding any type of inflation expectation and possibly taking us down the hyperinflation route. And so if you say that's not possible, I want to read some information to you from these articles here, but then really bring it home with how it's more than possible because it's happened already in an isolated event in the country of Zimbabwe. So I'll give you an idea what's going on here. It says, will Zimbabwe's pensioners finally get what they are owed? And this is all in regards to the fact that a lot of people lost their entire nest egg during their internal problems they had at the same time we had our Great Recession here. Since Zimbabwe adopted a multi-currency system in 2009, insurance firms have been clashing with pensioners and policyholders who are unhappy with the paltry benefits being dispersed to them. The company's claim contributions have been wiped by inflation during the Zimbabwe dollar era, which reached an unbelievable 2013 million% inflation at its peak in 2008. Some pensioners who have worked up to 50 years and are insurance policyholders have been receiving as little as $10 per month. And so here we have the idea that in the country of Zimbabwe, during their economic downturn, which was the same time as ours, everyone expecting some form of a retirement or pension from a company or whatever didn't receive it, or if they did receive it, because of the hyperinflation completely wiping away everything they've saved, everything they received was pennies on a dollar, if not even less. And some people didn't receive anything. And so just to show you how bad things were, when the hyperinflation occurred and people lost all their savings, it was inflated away to the point where this note here, which is a $50 million note. So imagine if you had saved up $1 million during normal times in that country, and then during the economic downturn, because of the policies implemented, the government borrowing, printing so much paper that it was hyperinflated away to where you were left with, say, a $50 million note that could purchase nothing, how pissed you would be because of the policies implemented after the market downturn there. So these are things that's worth considering, that during the time of the Great Recession for us, it was very catastrophic and there's a lot of money lost. And it pales in comparison to what happened in Zimbabwe as well as what's going on in Venezuela right now. But these are all extreme scenarios, but very realistic in the fact that you never know what could happen, as we've learned from prior recessions that unexpected things do occur. And as we continue to experience more of this economic expansion, it only further increases the chance of it being an even more alarming and shocking event that does occur at some time in the near future. And when it does happen, the policies implemented will be something that we could never even imagine. And if you think it's not possible, just imagine 10, 15 years ago, looking at right now, being at near zero interest rates and people putting money in their savings accounts and receiving zero interest. And if you factor in the current rate of inflation, you're actually losing purchasing power by having your money in the banks. And then you factor in the idea that the pension funds are having problems and they're underfunded, and all the things happening in regards to just investing and retirement in general. And so it's not too far-fetched to say the next crisis that does come officially, the policies implemented could send the Federal Reserve note into a hyperinflation type of scenario. And if that does happen, what happened in Zimbabwe would pale in comparison to what it's like to have Federal Reserve notes that's inflated away. There's a gentleman I interviewed by the name of Philip Haslam, who is in the RTD University series. And so he actually has a book, and it's called When Money Destroys Nations. And it's a very detailed book on what happened in Zimbabwe and how I can actually see a lot of similarities in how policies implemented after their crisis there could happen in our country here. And if it does, the nest egg of baby boomers will be wiped away, not by the crash necessarily or the correction that's going to happen, but by the policies that will inflate away everything they've saved through hyperinflation or something of that nature. So I would love to hear your thoughts on this news update here. Let me know your comments below. And other than that, if you find this informative, please share this with family and friends so they can become more aware of monetary matters as well as what could happen in the worst case scenario if we experience some type of correction that causes monetary policy as well as fiscal policy to take us off the cliff when it comes to trying to stabilize things by them printing excessively, causing some type of inflation that turns into hyperinflation. So other than that, enjoy the rest of your day. Look forward to hearing your thoughts in the comment section. Thanks.